right, welcome back everybody to the Hector and Mike Experience. Hector, it's good to see you. We start off this episode with sending out our condolences to great American Colin Powell's family. General Powell passed away recently, I believe at the age of 84, for complications of COVID. I know there's been some mixed reaction, which I find somewhat incredible that there would even be a mixed reaction about his death and his contribution to our country. But him and others in that first Gulf War was pretty amazing because I remember it well, having had some friends over there. It was pretty amazing because it came on the heels of what happened in Vietnam and a lot of questions about American military and what our policies were. And with him at the helm and General Schwarzkopf, there was no doubt about the fact that we were in it to win it. And he made great contributions, I think, to this country. And he'll be sadly missed. He was a good guy. So we extend our condolences to him and his family. But let's move to California and talk about some of the nonsense that continues here. Maybe one of the things we now see is that some of our California school systems are running short of money, which is pretty amazing considering it's only October. And the school system started up most recently in August and September. For the most part, kids were doing remote learning for the last year plus. And the state, has a combined surplus between what the state has generated and what the federal government has given of, over $70 billion. It seems somewhat interesting that there's such a shortfall in revenue for some of these local school systems. What do you make of that, Hector?
Well, Mike, one of the interesting things with the school systems is you've got like the San Francisco Unified School District that's $116 million in a deficit. So their shortfall is $116 million. You've got the Hayward Unified that is looking to close a school, lay off some teachers in order to kind of deal with its shortfall. And we're getting this throughout the state of California. You've got the Los Angeles Unified School District that has also seen decline in enrollment, but they're also dealing with shortfalls. And the interesting thing is that we looked at the budget over the last 10 years and how much money we've given to education. So this year we've given them more than $80 billion. Just 10 years ago, we were giving them about $40 billion. And so when you strike out some of the monies that are appropriated for certain things, we've basically increased our budget by about $38.5 billion over the last 10 years. And so as we've been increasing this money, we've also seen, and this kind of makes it the interesting part, is we've seen decline in enrollment. So you've got less kids, you've got more money, and now we're dealing with the shortfall, especially over this last year where most of the kids were all in remote learning. And I think it begs the question is, what happened to the money? Where did it go? This is all taxpayer money that goes into our school systems. But at the same time, our K through 12 educational system, as we see reports that come out, where our students in math and reading, rank somewhere in the 40th to 45th percentile out of all 50 states. And so it's not as though our numbers have been increasing dramatically in our achievements, or our achievement gap continues to widen as compared to other people in the state. But I guess the big question really is what happened to all that money? And I think we all kind of have an idea of where some of that money goes to, but I think that's a whole lot of money just to continue to have these shortfalls.
Well, I don't necessarily blame the kids for that failure in the math rate, because the people that are running their school system took $38.5 million more than what they had and ended up with a school system that's still short of money and still short of results. So, maybe it's the new math. I don't know. Is that STEM? I keep hearing about STEM all this. Is that the new STEM? I'm not sure what the new math is anymore. But it doesn't add up is basically the bottom line. And I think it's worthwhile that someone should take some investigative look into where that money is going, because I think people vote for this kind of thing with the belief that the money is going to go to help with better tools to teach, with better support for the teachers, with resources to better schools that are going to be safer for kids so that they don't have to worry about trying to stay alive and can actually have a learning environment. And if it's failing, why are we giving more money? And taxpayers should ask that question, because I think people do support their teachers, but they certainly don't support that kind of waste. And I would be frankly stunned if we looked at where that money went and found it went into teachers' pockets. I don't think it did. And so that's, I think that's one of the valid things that happens around here, is that, money just disappears. And because we're so big, it's these huge quantities of dollars, of taxpayer dollars, and people have a right to know where it all went, and then make a decision as to whether they think their elected officials are spending that money wisely. What I found ironic was you led off with San Francisco. Their school system is short. I mean, they've got the Speaker of the House, they've got the Vice President of the United States, they got the Governor of California, and their school system short of money? Come on, to quote the President of the United States. Come on, man. That doesn't make sense. Plus which the city itself, as we talked about previously, seems to have enough money to pay people not to kill each other, but they don't have enough money to put money into schools so kids can learn. And by the way, San Francisco is not that far from Silicon Valley, one of the most successful and high wealth places in the country. None of it makes sense. The money is there. It's just how it's being spent.
We know a lot of this money isn't really going to the classrooms. I mean, you've got teachers that still have to come out of their pocket, to pay for supplies. Teachers that have to come out of their pocket. Just to get wipes or to get paper towels. That because I get the request in, said, hey, our classroom could use pencils. Our classroom can use paper towels. We can use wipes. We can use a variety of different things. And so, as parents, we go out there and, we provide whatever we can. At the same time, a lot of these schools and the classrooms themselves holding little fundraisers so that they can provide some of these ample supplies with $30+ billion going into school system. And it's not just over a year. I think it's important to realize is that, every year you've got $5 billion more. Next year you've got another $4 billion more. That means it's now gone, up $6 to $7 billion, and so it's an incremental growth. And so what we'll do is in the description of this podcast and also with the video, we'll put in the links over to the governor's budget page, and in there, we'll put the page number, and so the people could see the graph of actually what the increases in K through 12 spending over the last 12 years.
That's the kind of stuff that people need, I think. I mean, you can give people the information, tell them where to find it, and then they can make a decision as to whether or not these legislators and elected officials that they keep putting in office in the state are doing justice, not just to the taxpayer, but to the kids in the schools and the teachers that teach there. I mean, being a teacher these days has got to be one of the toughest jobs around. You never know one day from the next whether you should wear a mask or not. You never know one day from the next whether you should get one vaccine or another vaccine or what have you. You never, you go in, like you said, you have to turn to the parents as well as their own pocketbook sometimes for the resources that they need. And you get all this money being spent. And so I don't envy people who are teachers these days in any way, shape, or form. I admire them. They should be getting support. There's no doubt about it. And the fact that they're not, and the fact that the results show that, things aren't getting better, at some point in time, you got to break that government cycle, which is, well, we spend more because this is what we spent last year. They never asked the question, did it work? Did the teachers get more resources? Did the kids learn better? Did they have a safer environment? Did they have enough equipment? Did they have the right things they needed? They never asked those questions. They asked the question, how much they get last year? How much more can we give them this year? Wrong question. Wrong question.
Well, and it highlights some of the problems happening within our, obviously, state government of not being able to ask those questions. But I think it's a good segue into into looking at, I think, another major kind of back and forth that has been happening in California. And you mentioned, Silicon Valley. You've got, this past year, you had a state assemblywoman from San Diego, Lorena Gonzalez, who ended up tweeting out, "F you, Elon Musk." The next day, Elon Musk responds and says, "Message received." And so what we saw in the beginning of this month is Elon Musk, suggested that because of that tweet and because of the business environment in California, in addition to the lack of affordable housing in California, he's picking up his headquarters for Tesla and moving it to Austin, Texas. Moving out of Palo Alto, moving it out to Austin, Texas, and I guess the message was received, and he's now taking action on it. But now to be outdone, you've got the Assemblywoman Lorena Gonzalez has just responded and has said, we California, we made Elon Musk, and in doing so, maybe companies like Tesla need to go out and pay more taxes. I don't think that's good. That's the right message. That's going to spur a lot of these more, these dreamers and innovators like Elon, and make them want to stay in California, especially if they're going to get taxed already. I mean, we already have, the worst business climate, some of the highest taxes, energy rates, some of the highest housing costs, and the highest poverty rates, and the highest homeless rates in the nation. And yet, this is a message coming out.
I think Lorena is auditioning to be the next director of economic development for the state of Nevada, Arizona, Idaho, and every other 47 other states, because that's the kind of attitude that drives people away. High profile person. I mean, first of all, you're an elected official. You don't tweet F you to anybody. I mean, let's just start there. You're an elected official. You actually tweet F you to someone? Anybody, Elon Musk or Joe Musk. Doesn't matter. That's not what you do. You're elected by the people. Have a little more dignity and respect for the people that you're serving. So, I mean, that's where you start. And then you go to someone, and you look at what they pay in taxes, what they pay in payroll, and everything else. Plus, everybody knows that company like Tesla and Musk are more on the center left part of the political spectrum, not the center right, not the right, but the left. And you just drove them away. And so all of the kind of social justice and contributions that they make to this to the state or to society for things that probably Lorena Gonzalez talks a lot about but maybe doesn't do much about, all of that's now gone. Welcome to Austin, Texas. It's Austin is probably the liberal bastion of the state of Texas, and so now they have a huge resource now. That's not the way you attract business. That's not the way you treat business. That's not the way you treat your constituents. But it does show the mentality that we have in government, in this state especially, I think, that says, we're going to tell you, the innovators, the creators, the people that employ people, the people that sign the front of the check, not the back of the check, how to do your business. And how much more you need to pay us. To do what? We don't know. To perform what? We don't know. To deliver on what results? We don't know. That's pure arrogance is what that is. And I would hope that, even though they're of the same party, that someone in the governor's office would have a conversation and say to the assemblywoman, that's not helpful. That kind of attitude or kind of behavior is not helpful, because it just doesn't lose, not just, you lose something like Tesla, that's a huge loss. But it also is a statement to any other company that would even think about coming to California that, it's like the old Wild Wild West now. Before you get into town, you're gonna get robbed on the stagecoach on your way into town by the California government. That's what she's basically saying. And that's the kind of stuff that, California, they keeps talking about the 5th largest economy in the world. I guess the world ain't what it used to be. But California, the reason it is not because of the tax structure or the school structure, or as you mentioned, the cost of housing, the cost of living, the cost of energy. it's so big because of the number of people that live here that have spending power. And the more you have a remote economy like we've moved to and I'm moving to, the easier it's going to be for some company to be based and manufacture or produce whatever it is that they're selling and ship it into California, to provide those people with that, their products and their goods. So it's talk about biting your nose to spite your face, as my mom used to say. That's you can't do it any better than she just did.
Well, I think you bring an interesting point, especially with what we've been able to witness for businesses during this time of COVID, is you can do a lot of jobs remotely. There's certain industries that would make it a lot easier, and you're able to go to a place like Austin, Texas, which is, for all intents and purposes, pretty liberal, and so you
Very.
can get you get your that type of lifestyle, that type of people around you that you're accustomed to. And you end up, obviously the housing is a lot more affordable there than it is in Silicon Valley. But you're trading one place for another, where the political environment within that town is pretty much the same.
Exactly. That's exactly right. It's not like you're having to give up any of your liberal beliefs, your liberal social beliefs or economic beliefs. The Austin, Texas is a very, it is the liberal bastion of Texas. It is known for its liberalism, and from a government standpoint. So, what happens? You have them with a welcome mat to a business that's going to, create electric vehicles, which they all support. Even in a state that's a high energy state like Texas, they're going to get all of that benefit. They're going to get the kind of lifestyle and the kind of social belief that they have in Silicon Valley, and they're going to be treated with respect. Gee, what is it that these people here in California in the legislature miss when they treat businesses like that? And Elon Musk is obviously a high profile one. Usually you shouldn't piss off somebody that has the ability to put a rocket ship into space. That's just, I don't know, that's a business principle or what, but that's just a good first rule of thumb. If they can put a rocket in space, you ought to treat them nice. That's all, with some respect. But they moved to Texas. They get everything that they had here at lower cost, lower production cost, same quality, better quality of life for the people that work for the company, lower cost for production for the company, no doubt about that, and still the same lifestyle that you had where you were here. You don't have the Pacific Ocean out your window, but you can always go find it if you want.
Yeah, but you've got the same you've got coffee houses, you've got the nice restaurants, you've got the music scene, you've got a lot of other things that provide that quality of life. And you're right. It's not just Tesla. You've got Hewlett Packard that it's actually moved its company. Charles Schwab is also moved out to Texas, and there's a lot of other companies throughout this last 2 years that have made that decision to move out of California. And this idea that California, look, we've got a lot of great things. We've got a lot of great weather, people, diversity of food, and a variety of other things. But it's amazing, talking to friends and talking to other folks about just how they're planning when they retire to just get, move to Idaho, move to Utah, move to Texas, and Arizona, and a bunch of other places. And I've never seen that enthusiasm of wanting to move out of California as I have over the last, few years.
Oh, I think it's not just enthusiasm. I think it's just a reality that you can always come back and visit. And the reality is, even though gas prices are going through the roof around the country, through the roof in California, the average price of gas right now in Los Angeles is about $4.50. They're talking today about it going up to $4.70. And in other places, the average price of gas is going up. They're paying $3.25, $3.50. Home heating oil, all of that kind of stuff. Energy costs for businesses is going up. So people, I think, are understanding the fact that while there is some natural beauty here, you can always come and visit, and that you don't have to pay the exorbitant taxes, and you don't have to deal with people like Lorena Gonzalez that are going to tell people, F you. that are job creators, investors, people that put money in the economy. I mean, how much do you think the Tesla in the local economy put in for things like culture, nonprofits, and stuff like that? I mean, an enormous amount, more than she can ever imagine. And she just basically said "F you" to all of that. So what do? It's so bad. What they do is they decide to go to a state with Ted Cruz instead of instead of the Assemblywoman. So that tells you a lot right there. When you choose Ted Cruz over the Assemblywoman, that's probably a good sign that maybe she went a little bit too far. I don't know anybody that really wants to choose Ted Cruz.
Well, to kind of keep within the same theme, a little bit different subject is, it looks like Joe Biden, who you quoted a little bit earlier, has decided he's going to open up the ports in Los Angeles and Long Beach and run them on a 24-hour cycle now.
Right.
Something we talked about.
Well, but here's the funny part. I was listening to him, and this is something people need to be aware of, and we'll talk more about this on another show. But we often talk, because we're in the public affairs business, about how businesses, and some businesses in particular that are high profile, need to be ready to deal with bad press and blame that gets put on them. And I was listening to Joe Biden, and he put the blame on the oil companies for not producing enough oil. And I was just listening to him like, dude, are you serious? I mean, the first thing you did is cut off the Keystone Pipeline and kill tens of thousands of jobs, immediately cut off America's independence on creation of energy. You've passed all of these regulations, and you're working on passing a whole bunch more legislation that will restrict their abilities to produce. And now you're blaming the oil companies for not producing enough oil. Plus which, I was listening on the news this morning, and they had someone from the government on, and they said, the average gas in LA is $4.50. It's going to go up maybe as high as $4.70 plus on the average. And the reason is it's our fault, because it's our fault, because we've come out of the pandemic, and now we're getting out of our houses, and we want to go do stuff. And so we're consuming more gasoline. So it's our fault that the price of gas is going up. And, what we're seeing is government blaming people for problems that government creates. So Joe comes along on the 13th of October and, says he's going to tell the ports to open 24/7. He talks about how they have failed to adequately prepare for the sudden increase in shipping that was coming. So it's not only the consumer's fault for wanting this stuff. It's also the port's fault for not being ready. It's the manufacturer's fault for not getting it into the pipeline quicker and more and just faster than what it needed to be. And somehow it's all everybody's fault. And, it's just, you look at it and you say, I think that's one of the reasons his numbers are cratering the way they are, is because people are kind of losing their patience on both sides of the aisle. I mean, you don't get numbers as low as he has just because Republicans don't like him or are upset with his job performance. You get numbers like he has because it's across the board. It's a considerable amount of independents and even some Democrats that are not happy with what's going on. So,
well, and is this going to end up? We've got it's kind of crazy to say this, but we've got an election coming up pretty soon, where you've got redistricting, the drawing of the lines, and new districts will come out, at least here in California, in the next month and a half, 2 months. So we'll see how those lines shape up. The same thing with the rest of the country. We're already beginning to see a couple of local maps that have become public. And so as you're getting high gas prices, that are skyrocketing, not just here in California, but across the nation, as you're getting energy rates continue to increase, what does this mean? And, and the inflation continues to rise. What does this mean for Joe Biden? And I think more importantly, what does it mean? Because, he's not going to run for re-election anytime soon, or the presidency is still up in about 3 years. But what does it mean for control of Congress? Is this right now sounding the alarm bells over for Nancy Pelosi? Chuck Schumer, saying, if we don't get tightening up on this, if we don't get figure some sort of solution right now, the president could end up losing his majorities that he's got in both houses.
Well, well, his majority in the Senate is by the person on the milk carton, Kamala Harris, that nobody has seen lately, which continues to be an amazing thing considering the challenges that the president has in Congress with his own party. Trying to get them to get together on this $3.5 trillion infrastructure bill, and he can't get them together. And to his credit, he keeps trying to bring them together. But you would think that your vice president, who was most recently in the United States Senate, would be part of all that, and she's nowhere to be found. That's the one person that gives them the control in the Senate. On the House side, I mean, I'm not getting into prognostication a year more than a year out, but I would just say this: Republicans would have to screw up a one-car funeral to not be able to take control of Congress at this point in time on the House side. With all of the things that have happened both domestically and internationally, they would, they really got to go out of their way to screw this thing up to not, widely take control of Congress. But you never know. On the Senate side, it's a little more challenging because of the different seats that are up. But I don't think there's any doubt. But the thing about it too, though, is it's not just conversation. See, the problem is you can have these debates and what have you. The problem is when you go to the store and you go down the aisle and you don't see what you're looking for and it's not there, or the amount of choices you have are less than what you used to, or the price of something. I went to the market last week. And, the little cups of Greek yogurt that I always get, which are $1, are now $1.50. And I'm like, what the hell happened in the last week that caused this to go up 50 cents? Spaghetti sauce, I get the good kind, all right? So
but here's the thing is, maybe the cows are on strike. I don't know.
They could be. I mean, they're not getting their $15 an hour. I don't know. I mean, but it's just, it makes no sense. It doesn't make any sense. Spaghetti sauce went up 50 cents. I mean, was there a tomato famine? I don't understand this stuff. But when you start looking at things, and I saw this great article, and just a couple of them to point out, there's different things. It's not just the supply chain, it's labor shortages. So who's having a labor problem? Ben and Jerry's. And so what does that mean? They can't get enough people to work. So what it means is they're reducing the different flavors that they're producing. So, you don't have that kind of choice that you're used to. Other things, prices are going to go up. We talked about energy. There's a great one on carbonated drinks. The production of carbon dioxide has been reduced because of regulations that have been put on. So what happens if CO2 production is reduced? Well, that carbonation goes into things like frozen food, dry ice, your drinks, your soft drinks, and all that kind of stuff. Carbonated beverages. We've talked in the past about chicken. I don't know. I mean, it's like one night some foreign, alien spaceship came and took all the chickens. It's kind of like out of a South Park episode that all the chickens disappeared. Here's another one. This could be a real problem. Diapers. Households with small children, diaper prices have increased because of increase in raw materials, shipping delays, container shortages. So, you better not give the kids ice cream. And then this other one I loved, that I found was fish sticks, because there's U.S. and Canada has some kind of dispute, and now there's a shortage of fish sticks. So those are the real things that people will see when they go to the market. When they go to the cash register at the market, the choices they have are less, the prices they pay are more, and that's the kind of thing that no rhetoric can get yourself out of from a PR standpoint. The reality of what hits you in the face when you go to the gas pump and you're paying $4.57 or $4.79, that reality hits you directly. And all of the words that, they may try and spin to put blame on someone else or to get themselves out of it isn't going to do them a whit of good. And that's why I say what I said a minute ago, which is with all of this happening, I can't see how Republicans don't win control of the House in 2022.
Well, all the fundraising's going on right now. Everyone's looking to get those funds, and we see all the emails circulating back and forth on every little misstep that Biden does, as the Democrats do the same thing, and so it'll make for an interesting 2022 election. Yeah.
I got the best one of all. Maybe we'll put it up. So I got one email that says if I contribute now, I can get on a list to buy Christmas wrapping paper with Donald Trump on it. It's like Trump Christmas wrapping paper, and I looked at it and showed it to my wife and ended up sleeping outside that night because it didn't go over well. But yeah, if you've ever signed up just for any information, or God forbid you gave $20 to some candidate that you liked 15 years ago, you should get a new email address, because you are either getting swamped or about to get swamped.
Well, I'll see what your Trump wrapping paper looks like in coming in for the holidays. But no, yeah, send me over that email. We'll post it up post it up there. So
okay, we'll do.
Should make for interesting comments from folks. But it's been an interesting week. I know we're going to try to do a couple more of these podcasts more regularly. Obviously, we've been traveling a little bit. You've been watching your Boston Red Sox as they've gone out there, and I have no idea what the heck you guys are doing. You guys are just destroying the Astros, which how much, being a Dodgers fan, we hate the Astros.
Yeah. I mean, when they beating the trash can, they're beating them like a trash can right now. So, and they deserve it.
Well, and the thing is, it's like, how do you guys end up getting 3 grand slams in 2 games?
Right.
Which is
it's the chowder. It's the chowder in Boston.
Well, what I wanted to ask you is give us some runs, because we keep on falling short right now to Atlanta.
Dodgers are going to be fine. I mean, Atlanta won. I was surprised Atlanta won a couple of games. We ought to talk about the embarrassment MLB's going to have if somehow Atlanta makes it to the finals in the World Series, and in this woke society where you can't say or do anything that offends anybody in any way, shape, or form. They've got people there doing the tomahawk chop and all this other stuff. I was watching that when I was watching the Dodger game, and I'm like, how are they able to do that? I'm confused.
But didn't they just end? I mean, look, I know California has banned, state travel to, I don't know, about 13 or 17 states in California. I don't remember the number off the top of my head. But didn't they just get rid of the All-Star game or some other game in Atlanta?
Yeah, MLB moved the All-Star game this year from Atlanta to Denver. They did it in protest of a law that was passed in Georgia on voting rights. They said it was discriminatory against minorities. Ironically, one of the things in the law in Atlanta was that it had a certain amount of days set aside for early voting. And they moved to Colorado, where the law in Colorado actually is even more restrictive than what they passed in Atlanta. So it's actually fewer days allowed for early voting. They said it was because this law is prejudicial against minorities, and in these big events like Super Bowls and playoff games or All-Star games, small businesses in those communities, that's like a huge windfall for them. It's a whole market that they don't rely on for their everyday success. And Atlanta, it's about 68% is minority owned, mostly black small businesses that lost all of that opportunity that went to Denver that was 9% minority. So, MLB did all of this, and now they're going to, if somehow Atlanta is able to win a couple more games, which I would be surprised if they do, but if they are able to win a couple more games, they're going to be showcasing a baseball team that has people wearing headdresses and doing the tomahawk chop and all this other stuff. I don't understand it. I really don't. For a society that is, so woke that they allow that to happen. Washington doesn't have a name for their football team. although the way they've been playing, they can be called the Stinkers. And Cleveland, baseball team just had to change its name.
I think they're the Defenders, the Cleveland
yeah.
Defenders,
Right.
And it's
They're
just
defending against the Canadians from coming in from the north.
or maybe the cold air that comes in from the north.
Well, they're failing on that.
Yeah.
But I mean, I just let's just hope the Dodgers win and put an end to that debate. That's how we'll look at it.
Well, as a Dodgers fan, but it's for other reasons. I mean, this whole idea of we're doing this for minorities, like this whole voter identification, and it's like, oh no, we can't have voter ID because it's prejudice against minorities. It's like, as a minority, my parents have IDs. My parents immigrated here from Mexico. They didn't speak a lick of English, right. Didn't understand the culture, but they figured out how to get an ID.
Right.
And to say that, minorities can't get ID, that's just saying, well, we think minorities are too dumb and too ignorant to go get voter identification. It's like, no, we're not dumb. We're not ignorant. We can figure it out. We have for all these years. I mean, you even have, especially like in California, people who are undocumented that have driver's licenses,
right?
Because they, legalize them in California, but all of a sudden, we can't have ID to go show while we vote at the polls. It's bizarre. And the thing I always find interesting is you have a lot of these, academic professors who happen to be white, who happen to go out and say, well, let us tell you on your behalf what I think we should be doing, because we think you're still too ignorant and too dumb to figure it out yourself. But we, the smart ones, who've got a bunch of letters by our name, no, we'll tell you what you should be thinking.
It's insulting.
It is.
It's insulting, and that's and it's a political pawn that they use, and it doesn't work. And that's why nationally, I think the latest number I saw is 77% of people nationally support some form of voter ID to be able to vote. If you need a voter ID to go get if you need an ID to get a fishing license, or an ID to buy something, it's not that big of a deal. But what they do is they try and use that minority, use them as pawns basically, and say it's not against anybody. It's real simple. I mean, people are able to get IDs. Some states are passing laws now where they will provide voter IDs for people. Free of charge. They're putting it in their budgets, and Pennsylvania is one of them that's working on passing a law like that, and will provide it. It's what voter ID is. It doesn't make it any more difficult to vote; it just makes it harder to cheat.
Well, I'm going to throw you a curveball here. Mexico has voting IDs.
Do they?
They've got a voting card. Yeah, one of my uncles had come to visit and so forth, and I saw he had this conversation, and he showed me his identification to vote.
Wow!
So Mexico has a voting ID, but yet here, that right there becomes the absurdity of it. It's like it's discriminatory against minorities, but yet the minorities in their home country have voting IDs.
There's a lot more things going on that people should be that government should be worried about, rather than this kind of stuff. And again, to me, what it is, it's just a kind of this red herring to try and create a system that doesn't make it any easier to vote, but makes it easier to cheat. Yeah. And that's why I do think you see numbers across the board. In anything that you have that's in the high 70s, in some cases, at some points it was the low 80s of popularity. Again, that's not something that's right or left or Republican or Democrat. That's straight across the board, all different philosophies and all different genders and all different ethnicities that think it's pretty common sense to be able to have that.
Well, Mike, let's end our show here, and like I said, we'll be doing another one pretty soon. I think this week, and so we'll get this one out as soon as possible. And
don't forget, go buy your diapers; they're going to run out.
That and your Italian sauce over there, Mike. You better stock up on that.
I know. Well, I already did.